All right, we're going to first talk today a little bit about setup of our arc welders. Some people call it stick welding because this is the electrode that we use. This is basically the wire in a MIG welding system. So what we have right here, we can look at this part right here. This is the electrode, this is the steel, and then all this stuff on the outside kind of replaces our shielding gas, or if we're soldering, it's kind of like flux. This is the stuff that burns away. I guess it's something called like sodium hydride or something like that. Now if you can see, do I have the numbers facing you?
Yep.
That says 6011. This one over here says 7014. I don't know what the second digits mean, the 1 and the 4, or on this one the 11, but because there's so many different variations. The 60 and the 70 mean that this one, the weld has a 60,000 tensile strength, that's in PSI, and the 70 would be then 70 thousandths. So they both have some advantages and some disadvantages. I have a chart for you on Schoology that shows which rod to choose for thickness of metal, for cleanliness of the metal, for penetration, all that stuff. It's all on a chart. It's a little bit different than MIG welding, and it takes some getting used to. So for basic setup, here's the machine. For everything about 3/8 and under, we can be on the 35 to 165 amp range. And then if you're welding some way thicker stuff, you're going to want to flip it up. But and then of course use the corresponding adjustments, the different dials on here. So this is a very powerful machine. It's about as powerful as our MIG welders. You can weld 1/2-inch plate steel, no problem, but it's noisy and it's a little bit more crude. So here's our on-off switch, our ground cable we always have on our grounded to our table or whatever you're welding, and then here's a nice non-conductive holder for the electrode. Once we take the electrode and we place it in here, if we set this on the table, it's going to start welding on the table. So it's always a good idea to set the electrodes back on the table whenever you're done and set that back in there. This is plastic, so it's not going to conduct electricity. Looking back on here, we have our material that we're going to lay some beads on. I've got some other pieces here that we're going to do a corner weld demo on for you. And then this is something new that a lot of you may not know. This is just a little slag or dross hammer. And what we're going to do here is, it's pointed, you can see that. We just tap that slag and then it busts off. It's kind of like the brittleness of when you burn a marshmallow and you get that carbon on the outside. It's kind of like that. You just chip that stuff away, and then underneath, when you wire brush it, you can see that beautiful weld underneath. That's a pretty good sized tack weld right there, but we can, well, I'll show you the rest later. Other things in the room here, this does produce a lot of smoke compared to MIG welding, so you're going to want to make sure that you have one of these exhaust hoods brought down and put next to wherever you're welding. They have a magnet down here. They're kind of crude, but we'll set that right there, and then when we turn it on, there's a switch there. So again, just to recap, got to have the exhaust hood, got to have the exhaust switch on. There's no shielding gas to turn on with this type of welding. So what we can do now, glasses, welding hood. I'm just going to show you how to strike an arc. What we're going to do is we're going to take and put this in the holder. This is insulation right here, and then the metal inside, right like that, is how we would clamp that, and we'd be able to weld just by holding that on there.
There's multiple angles.
Yep, if you can see the teeth in there, there's multiple ways to hold it so that you can be comfortable. Whatever works best for you. So you're going to want to play around with that a little bit. What I'm going to do here is simulate striking an arc, which I'm going to want to kind of brush and then bring back and then start where I want to weld. because I need to make that connection. I need to strike that arc, and that's probably the hardest part about arc welding, is getting that strike really nice so that you can immediately start. Most people, when they're learning how to arc weld, they're going to move way too fast. But you're going to go nice and slow. With this 1/8 inch diameter welding rod, we're going to go at about this pace. Now the other thing to realize here is that since this is the electrode, should we shut that off, you think? The exhaust? Sure. Normally we'd want that on, but since this is being narrated here, since this is being drug across the weld area, we also need to be pushing this in. So this is a little bit different than MIG, because the gun just doesn't point and we got to go. We have two directions here. We have to go in and feed the electrode into the puddle. And if you don't, the arc will get very long and it'll start to make a weird noise, and then it'll eventually just shut off. I'll show both of those, but what I'm going to first do is an arc, and we'll take a look at that, and then I'll show you some other techniques. I like to hold mine. I like to hold this at about a 45 angle right there. That's just what I'm used to. So here's how to strike an arc.
Hey, power.
I've been doing that for a while. This one might work. The reason I switch, is because sometimes the flux on this will burn away and the electrode won't be showing. So if that happens, just grab another electrode. These things are cheap. Ready? So one more time, I'm going to strike an arc, and then I'm going to stop just after a second. It'd be kind of like a tack weld, just to kind of show you that process of bringing it down and then holding it. And it's kind of an art. It's complicated if you've never done it.
One more time.
Did that come through?
Yep.
All right. So these things can get really hot. This one's still smoking. To set that down so it can cool, always assume that when you come to this table, those things are hot. Put that back in there, and then you can chip away your slag or whatever. And